What happens when a stranded pilot becomes the unlikely key to stopping an ancient interstellar war? Just as Jack thought he was fighting for survival, he discovers a secret that could save or doom entire civilizations. You won't believe what he does next. Jack O'Connell's ship shuddered violently as alarms blared through the cockpit. The control panel was a chaotic mess of flashing red lights, sparks flying like fireflies in the dark. His hands gripped the yoke tightly, knuckles white, as he fought to stabilize the craft against the gravitational pull of an unknown planet. Valdyra, a name whispered among pilots as a cursed world, loomed ahead, its swirling violet clouds hiding secrets no human had ever dared to uncover. The hull groaned under the strain, metal protesting as if alive and in agony. Jack muttered curses under his breath, sweat dripping down his face despite the freezing temperature inside the cabin. He'd been chasing rumors of a derelict alien vessel when his engines failed without warning. Now he was plummeting toward this uncharted expanse, his only hope being the jagged mountains below that might cushion his fall or turn him into dust. With a deafening crash, the ship hit the surface, skidding across rocky terrain until it came to rest at the edge of a cliff. Smoke billowed out of the wreckage, and for a moment, all was still. Then, slowly, painfully, Jack crawled free, coughing and clutching his side. His vision blurred, but even through the haze, the sight before him was breathtaking and terrifying. Towering spires of black stone jutted into the sky, their surfaces etched with glowing runes that pulsed faintly, as if alive. Strange flora glowed softly around him, casting eerie shadows in every direction. As Jack staggered to his feet, pain radiating from his ribs, he noticed movement in the distance. Figures, no beings, emerged from behind the ruins. They were unlike anything he'd seen before. One group moved gracefully, their crystalline bodies refracting light like prisms, while the others lumbered forward, their armored forms rippling with raw power. Both factions stopped abruptly, staring at him with expressions he couldn't decipher. Before he could react, a voice echoed in his mind, not spoken aloud, but somehow understood. "You are not of this place." It wasn't accusatory, merely a statement of fact. But then another voice joined in, colder and more menacing. "He is an intruder. Kill him. We only just began this story. But believe me, it's about to get much more intense. Stay tuned to find out how Jack survives and discovers the truth hidden beneath Valdyra's surface." Jack froze, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst. The two groups of aliens stood poised, weapons drawn, their gazes locked onto him like predators assessing their prey. The crystalline beings shimmered ominously, their translucent forms flickering with hues of sapphire and emerald. Opposite them, the armored figures loomed larger than life, their metallic plates gleaming with a menacing sheen. Each faction seemed ready to strike, not just at him but at each other. "What do you want?" Jack shouted, raising his hands defensively. His voice cracked, betraying the fear clawing at his chest. Neither side answered directly. Instead, they exchanged hostile glances, their silent communication crackling with tension. Finally, one of the crystalline beings stepped forward, its voice resonating in Jack's mind once again. "This is not your war, human. Leave now or perish." "And where exactly would I go?" Jack shot back, gesturing wildly at the wreckage behind him. "My ship's toast, and I don't even know where the hell I am." His outburst earned a low rumble from the armored leader, who raised a weapon resembling a cross between a spear and a cannon. Its barrel hummed ominously, charging energy that sparked dangerously close to Jack's face. Instinctively, he ducked, rolling to the side as a bolt of plasma seared past him, leaving a smoking crater in the ground. "Great!" Jack muttered, scrambling to his feet. Just great. Caught between two warring factions, Jack realized he had no choice but to act fast. Spotting a narrow crevice nearby, he bolted toward it, adrenaline surging through his veins. The crystalline beings fired beams of concentrated light after him, while the armored warriors unleashed a barrage of explosive projectiles. Rocks shattered around him, debris raining down as he dove headfirst into the safety of the crevice. Inside, the air grew thick and damp, illuminated faintly by veins of glowing crystal embedded in the walls. Jack pressed himself against the cold stone, trying to catch his breath. That's when he noticed something strange. A faint humming sound emanating from deeper within the cave. Following it cautiously, he stumbled upon what appeared to be an ancient artifact. A massive sphere suspended mid-air, pulsating with energy. Runes similar to those on the ruins outside danced across its surface, shifting and rearranging themselves in patterns too complex to comprehend. As Jack reached out hesitantly, a vision flooded his mind. An endless battlefield, skies ablaze with fire, and countless lives lost. The sphere wasn't just a relic. It was a key, tied to the fate of both races and perhaps humanity itself. We're on the brink of something monumental. What happens next will change everything. You can't afford to miss the unraveling of this mystery. The vision faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Jack disoriented and trembling. The weight of what he'd seen pressed down on him like a physical force. These weren't just two alien species fighting over territory. They were locked in an existential struggle, one that spanned millennia. And somehow he was now entangled in their web. Before he could process further, the ground trembled violently, shaking loose rocks from the ceiling. Dust filled the air as shouts echoed outside. The battle had followed him here. Jack cursed under his breath, backing away from the artifact. Whatever this thing was, it clearly held immense significance. If he wanted answers, he needed time and allies. Peering cautiously out of the crevice, Jack spotted the crystalline beings retreating, their movements swift yet deliberate. They seemed less interested in killing him and more focused on protecting the artifact. The armored warriors, however, pursued relentlessly, their heavy footsteps sending shockwaves through the earth. Their leader bellowed commands in a guttural language, pointing toward the cave entrance. Thinking quickly, Jack grabbed a jagged piece of rock and hurled it in the opposite direction. The distraction worked momentarily, drawing several armored foes away from the main path. Taking advantage of the chaos, Jack slipped deeper into the caverns, navigating the labyrinthine tunnels with growing confidence. Eventually, he emerged into a vast chamber bathed in ethereal light. Pillars carved from obsidian stretched upward, disappearing into darkness. At the center stood another structure, a pedestal holding a second artifact identical to the first. This time, however, it was surrounded by guards from the crystalline race. Their forms shimmered brighter than ever, almost translucent, as if they drew strength from proximity to the object. One of them turned sharply, detecting Jack's presence. Its gaze bore into him, piercing and unyielding. "You trespass where none should tread," it intoned. "Why have you come? I didn't choose this." Jack snapped, frustration boiling over. "I crashed here, okay? I'm just trying to survive." The being tilted its head, studying him intently. After a long pause, it spoke again. "Survival is fleeting. Knowledge endures. Perhaps you may prove useful." "Useful?" Jack frowned, suspicion flaring. He opened his mouth to demand clarification, but the sound of thunderous footsteps cut him off. The armored warriors had breached the chamber, their weapons primed for destruction. Without hesitation, the crystalline beings formed a protective barrier around the artifact, their bodies glowing brighter with each passing second. Energy crackled in the air, building toward an inevitable clash. Jack backed away, realizing too late that he was trapped between two unstoppable forces. And then, something unexpected happened. A third voice entered his mind, softer but commanding. "Choose wisely, mortal. Your decision will shape destinies." The voice that invaded Jack's mind was neither crystalline nor armored. It was something else entirely, ancient and resonant, as if the planet itself had spoken. Jack froze, his heart pounding with a mix of awe and dread. The two alien factions paused mid-stride, their weapons still raised but their attention momentarily diverted. It seemed they too could hear the voice, though their reactions were markedly different. The crystalline beings bowed their heads reverently, while the armored warriors growled, their weapons flaring brighter in defiance. What are you?" Jack whispered, his voice trembling despite his attempt to sound brave. "I am Valdira," the voice replied, calm yet heavy with authority. "This world is my vessel, and these children have long forgotten their purpose." Before Jack could process this revelation, the chamber erupted into chaos once more. The armored warriors charged forward, their leader shouting orders in their guttural tongue. The crystalline beings responded by forming a shimmering shield of light, deflecting the initial barrage of plasma blasts. Sparks flew everywhere, casting eerie shadows across the cavern walls. Caught in the crossfire, Jack dove behind a pillar, narrowly avoiding a stray bolt that shattered the stone inches from his head. His mind raced. He needed a plan, but how could he possibly intervene in a battle between two advanced species? Then it hit him, the artifact. Both sides were fighting over it, which meant it held power. If he could figure out how to use it, or at least understand its significance, he might be able to tip the scales in his favor. Summoning every ounce of courage, Jack sprinted toward the pedestal. The crystalline beings noticed immediately, one of them breaking formation to intercept him. Its translucent form shimmered angrily as it blocked his path. "You cannot touch it," it warned, its voice sharp and commanding. "And why not?" Jack shot back, dodging a swipe from its glowing appendage. "You're too busy trying to kill each other to do anything useful with it." The being hesitated, its movements faltering for just a moment. That split second was all Jack needed. He slid past it, grabbing the artifact with both hands. Instantly, a surge of energy coursed through him, overwhelming and disorienting. Images flooded his mind. Ancient battles, celestial maps, and cryptic symbols that made no sense but felt eerily familiar. The armored warriors roared in outrage, charging toward him with renewed ferocity. But the crystalline beings reacted differently. They retreated, their forms flickering as if unsure whether to attack or protect. "What have you done?" one of them demanded, its voice tinged with panic. Jack didn't answer. He couldn't. The artifact pulsed violently in his grip, its energy threatening to consume him. Desperate, he focused on the one thought that dominated his mind: survival. The artifact responded to Jack's will in ways he couldn't comprehend. A wave of energy erupted outward, knocking both factions off their feet. The armored warriors crashed into the cavern walls, their metallic bodies denting upon impact, while the crystalline beings dissolved into fragments of light before reforming cautiously. Jack staggered backward, clutching the artifact tightly. His vision blurred, the runes etched into the sphere now glowing brighter than ever. He felt a strange connection to it, as if it were an extension of himself. But with that connection came a flood of emotions: anger, sorrow, hope, all swirling together in a maelstrom of confusion. "You've awakened it," one of the crystalline beings murmured, its tone a mixture of awe and fear. "Awakened what?" Jack snapped, his voice hoarse. What the hell is this thing? Before anyone could answer, the ground beneath them began to tremble. Cracks spiderwebbed across the cavern floor, glowing with molten light. The air grew thick with heat, and a deep rumble echoed through the chamber. "It begins," the voice of Valdira intoned, reverberating through the cavern. "The balance has been disrupted." Jack's eyes widened in horror as massive roots of living crystal erupted from the fissures, twisting upward like sentient vines. They wrapped around the pillars, shattering them effortlessly, and reached toward the combatants with alarming speed. "Run!" Jack shouted instinctively, though he wasn't sure who he was addressing. The crystalline beings moved swiftly, their forms phasing in and out of visibility as they evaded the crystal tendrils. The armored warriors, however, were less fortunate. Several were ensnared, their struggles futile as the roots tightened around them, pulling them into the depths below. Jack barely managed to avoid being caught himself, leaping over a collapsing section of the floor. He landed hard, rolling to absorb the impact. His grip on the artifact never wavered, even as pain shot through his arms and legs. "This way!" one of the crystalline beings called out, gesturing toward a narrow tunnel leading deeper into the caverns. Jack hesitated, torn between following them and finding another way out. But the choice was made for him when a tendril slammed down where he'd been standing moments earlier. With a muttered curse, he sprinted after the retreating aliens, clutching the artifact tightly. The tunnel twisted and turned unpredictably, forcing Jack to navigate blindly as he followed the faint glow emitted by the crystalline beings ahead. Behind him, the rumbling continued, growing louder with each passing second. The roots of living crystal were relentless, pursuing them with unnatural speed. Jack's lungs burned as he pushed himself harder than ever before. His body screamed in protest, but he knew stopping meant death. Every step brought new challenges: steep inclines, jagged rocks, and patches of unstable ground that threatened to collapse beneath his weight. Finally, they emerged into another chamber, smaller but no less imposing. At its center stood a monolith carved with intricate patterns that matched the runes on the artifact. The crystalline beings gathered around it, their forms pulsating with urgency. "Place it here," one of them instructed, pointing to a recess atop the monolith. Jack hesitated, skepticism warring with desperation. "And then what? What happens if I do?" "The cycle must be completed," the being replied cryptically. "Failure means annihilation for all of us." Jack clenched his jaw, weighing his options. On one hand, trusting these enigmatic aliens felt like a gamble he couldn't afford to take. On the other hand, doing nothing would likely result in everyone's demise, including his own. With a resigned sigh, he approached the monolith and placed the artifact into the recess. The moment it clicked into place, the chamber lit up with blinding intensity. The runes on the walls and ceiling began to glow, spinning in synchronized patterns that defied logic. A low hum filled the air, growing louder until it became almost unbearable. Jack covered his ears, dropping to his knees as the vibrations shook the very core of his being. The crystalline beings remained standing, their forms stabilizing as if drawing strength from the activation. Then, without warning, the monolith projected a holographic map into the air, a map of the galaxy, dotted with countless stars and planets. One star in particular glowed brighter than the rest, pulsating rhythmically. "That is your home," one of the beings said, pointing to the glowing star. "Earth." Jack stared at the projection, his breath catching in his throat. How did they know about Earth? And why did this map seem so important? Before he could ask, the armored warriors burst into the chamber, their weapons trained on the group. Their leader bellowed something in their harsh language, raising his weapon menacingly. The armored warrior's sudden entrance shattered the fragile calm in the chamber. Their weapons hummed with lethal energy, and their leader's piercing gaze locked onto Jack, as if he were the sole reason for their intrusion. The crystalline beings reacted instantly, forming a protective barrier around the monolith and its glowing projection of the galaxy. "Enough!" Jack shouted, stepping forward despite the danger. He held up his hands in a gesture of peace, or at least negotiation. "We're all here for answers, aren't we? Killing each other won't solve anything." His words seemed to have no effect on the armored warriors, who tightened their grips on their weapons. But the crystalline beings paused, their shimmering forms flickering faintly as if considering his plea. "He speaks truth," one of them said, turning to address the armored leader. "This conflict has already cost us too much. The cycle must be preserved." The armored leader snarled, raising his weapon threateningly. "Your lies will not deceive us again. The artifact belongs to our people. It is our birthright." Jack frowned, glancing between the two factions. "What exactly are you fighting over? What does this cycle even mean?" Before anyone could answer, the holographic map above the monolith began to shift. New symbols appeared, swirling around Earth's star before converging into a single, pulsating point. A deep, resonant tone filled the chamber, vibrating through Jack's chest and making it hard to breathe. "It begins," the crystalline beings whispered in unison, their voices trembling with reverence. "What begins?" Jack demanded, his frustration mounting. "The convergence," one of them replied solemnly, "a rare alignment of energies that determines the fate of civilizations. Your world is next." Jack's mind reeled as the implications sank in. Earth wasn't just some random planet on the map, it was tied to this cosmic event, this so-called convergence. And judging by the ominous tone of the crystalline beings, humanity's survival might depend on what happened here, now on Valdyra. But before he could press for more details, the armored warriors attacked. Plasma bolts streaked across the chamber, forcing Jack to dive behind the monolith for cover. The crystalline beings retaliated with bursts of radiant energy, creating dazzling explosions that illuminated the cavern like strobe lights. Caught in the chaos, Jack clung to the artifact, which still pulsed faintly in response to the unfolding battle. Its warmth seeped into his palms, grounding him amidst the madness. He realized then that the artifact wasn't just a relic. It was a key, a conduit for the planet's immense power. As another blast rocked the chamber, Jack noticed something peculiar about the holographic map. The pulsating point near Earth's star had begun to fracture, splitting into smaller shards that drifted toward other parts of the galaxy. Each shard carried a fragment of light, dimming slightly as it moved farther away. "That's it," Jack muttered under his breath. "It's spreading." Without warning, a tendril of living crystal erupted from the ground, wrapping itself around the monolith. The artifact flared brightly, syncing with the map's shifting patterns. The crystalline beings gasped in unison, their forms flickering erratically. "The balance is breaking," one of them cried out, panic evident in its voice. "We must stabilize it." Jack didn't wait for further explanation. Acting purely on instinct, he reached out and touched the artifact again. This time, instead of overwhelming him, the energy surged outward in controlled waves, stabilizing the fracturing points on the map. The armored warriors halted their assault, staring in disbelief as the shards of light began to coalesce once more. For a brief moment, everything fell silent. Then the voice of Valdyra returned, thunderous yet calm. "You have proven yourself worthy, mortal," it intoned. "Your actions will shape the destiny of countless worlds." Worthy? Jack almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. He was just a pilot who'd crashed on an alien planet, not some chosen hero destined to save the universe. Yet here he was, standing at the center of a galactic-scale conflict, holding the literal key to humanity's survival. The armored warriors lowered their weapons reluctantly, exchanging wary glances with the crystalline beings. For the first time since Jack arrived on Valdyra, there was a semblance of unity, or at least a temporary truce between the two factions. The convergence cannot proceed without balance, one of the crystalline beings explained, addressing both Jack and the armored leader. If left unchecked, the fractures will consume entire systems, including your homeworlds. And yours, the armored leader growled, though his tone lacked its previous hostility. Jack listened intently, piecing together the fragments of information. It seemed both races had been entrusted with safeguarding the convergence, but centuries of mistrust and rivalry had driven them to war. Now, with the artifact's help, they had a chance to restore the equilibrium, but only if they worked together. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect Earth," Jack declared, meeting the gaze of both factions. "But I can't do it alone. You need to put aside your differences now." To his surprise, the crystalline beings nodded in agreement. Even the armored leader hesitated before giving a curt nod. "Very well," the leader rumbled. "But know this, betrayal will not be tolerated." With the fragile alliance formed, the group turned their attention to the task at hand, stabilizing the convergence. The crystalline beings guided Jack to a series of consoles embedded in the chamber walls, each etched with runes similar to those on the artifact. They instructed him to channel the artifact's energy into the consoles, synchronizing them with the holographic map. "It is a delicate process," one of the beings warned. "One misstep could doom us all." Jack swallowed hard, sweat dripping down his face as he positioned himself at the first console. The artifact responded immediately, its glow intensifying as he directed its energy into the system. Slowly, the fractured shards on the map began to merge, reforming into a cohesive structure. Meanwhile, the armored warriors kept watch, their weapons at the ready in case the roots of living crystal, or worse, decided to make another appearance. Tension hung thick in the air, palpable enough to cut with a knife. As Jack worked his way through the consoles, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. The sense of being observed grew stronger with each passing moment, until finally, he spun around to confront it. Standing at the edge of the chamber was a figure unlike any he'd seen before. A towering silhouette cloaked in shadow, its presence radiating an aura of ancient power. "You've done well," the figure said, its voice echoing with the same authority as Valdyra's. "But the true test lies ahead." The towering figure stepped forward, emerging from the shadows to reveal a form that seemed to embody both crystalline and armored traits. Its body shimmered with an iridescent glow, while jagged plates of metallic armor covered its limbs. Eyes like twin suns burned with an intensity that made Jack instinctively take a step back. "You've tampered with forces beyond your understanding," the figure said, its voice layered with echoes that reverberated through the chamber. "Yet you have also shown courage and resolve. For that, I grant you this chance." Jack clenched his fists, trying to steady his nerves. "Who or what are you?" "I am the Arbiter," it replied simply, "guardian of the convergence. My purpose is to ensure balance between all who seek to wield its power." The crystalline beings bowed their heads in reverence, while the armored warriors exchanged uneasy glances. Clearly, even they held some measure of respect or fear for this enigmatic entity. "The fractures you repaired were only the beginning," the Arbiter continued. "The convergence requires alignment not just of stars, but of hearts. If these factions cannot reconcile their differences, the cycle will collapse, and countless worlds will perish." Jack felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He wasn't just fighting for Earth anymore. He was fighting for entire civilizations scattered across the galaxy. And somehow, he had to bridge the gap between two races locked in millennia-old hatred. "What do I need to do?" he asked, determination overriding his fear. The Arbiter extended a hand, pointing toward the monolith. "Complete the ritual. Merge the energies of both factions into the artifact. Only then can harmony be restored." The ritual proved far more complex than Jack anticipated. The crystalline beings instructed him to channel their radiant energy into the artifact first, describing it as the essence of creation. Once activated, the artifact would then absorb the raw, destructive force provided by the armored warriors, the essence of destruction. Together, these opposing forces would create balance. But trust was scarce. The armored leader watched Jack warily, his weapon never fully lowered. "If this fails," he warned, "we will hold you accountable. Trust me, I don't want to fail any more than you do." Jack shot back, his frustration bubbling over. Working quickly, Jack positioned himself at the base of the monolith. The crystalline beings formed a circle around him, their forms glowing brighter as they channeled their energy. A warm, golden light enveloped Jack, filling him with a sense of peace and clarity. Then came the armored warriors' turn. Their contribution was anything but peaceful. When they unleashed their energy, it surged violently, crackling like lightning and sending shockwaves through the chamber. Jack gritted his teeth, straining to maintain control as the two forces clashed within the artifact. The pressure mounted until Jack thought he might collapse under the strain. His vision blurred, and every muscle in his body screamed in protest. But just when he thought he couldn't hold on any longer, the artifact emitted a brilliant flash of light, stabilizing the flow of energy. "It's working!" one of the crystalline beings exclaimed, relief evident in its voice. But the celebration was short-lived. From the depths of the chamber, a low growl echoed, a sound unlike anything Jack had heard before. The ground trembled violently as something massive stirred beneath them. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the roots of living crystal retracted into the floor, revealing a gaping fissure that pulsed with malevolent energy. "No," one of the crystalline beings whispered, its voice trembling. "It's awakened." From the fissure emerged a monstrous creature, its form shifting and writhing as if it were made of liquid shadow. Tentacles tipped with razor-sharp claws lashed out, narrowly missing Jack as he dove out of the way. "What is that thing?" Jack shouted, scrambling to his feet. "The Devourer," the Arbiter answered grimly. "A manifestation of imbalance, born from centuries of conflict. It feeds on discord and chaos." The armored warriors charged forward without hesitation, their weapons blazing. Plasma bolts struck the creature's form, but it barely flinched, absorbing the attacks as if feeding on them. "We can't fight it alone," the crystalline leader urged. "We must combine our strength." Jack realized what needed to happen. Grabbing the artifact, he sprinted toward the front lines, shouting for everyone to regroup. "Focus your energy into the artifact. We'll use it to weaken the Devourer." Though reluctant, the two factions complied, channeling their combined powers into the artifact. As the energy built, Jack aimed it directly at the creature. A beam of pure light erupted from the artifact, striking the Devourer with devastating force. The Devourer let out an ear-splitting roar as the beam of light tore through its shadowy form. Its tentacles thrashed wildly, causing the chamber to quake even harder. Pieces of the ceiling began to collapse, forcing everyone to dodge falling debris. "This isn't enough," Jack yelled, panic creeping into his voice. "We need more power." At his words, the crystalline beings and armored warriors exchanged a glance. Then, As if reaching a silent agreement, they stepped forward together, placing their hands on the artifact alongside Jack. Their combined energies surged, amplifying the artifact's output exponentially. The beam of light grew brighter, pushing back against the Devourer's darkness. Slowly but surely, the creature began to shrink, its form dissolving into wisps of smoke. But the effort came at a cost. Jack could feel the strain coursing through everyone connected to the artifact. The crystalline being's forms flickered faintly, while the armored warriors staggered, their armor cracking under the pressure. Even the Arbiter wavered, its once imposing presence now diminished. "We're losing it," Jack shouted, pouring every ounce of strength he had left into the artifact. "Hold steady," the crystalline leader urged, its voice strained. "We are almost there." With a final, blinding burst of energy, the Devourer let out one last shriek before vanishing entirely. The chamber fell silent, save for the heavy breathing of those still standing. Exhausted but alive, Jack collapsed to his knees, the artifact slipping from his grasp. Around him, the crystalline beings and armored warriors stood side by side, united in victory for the first time in centuries. "The balance has been restored," the Arbiter announced, its voice softer now. "You have done what many believed impossible. For that, you have earned my gratitude, and the gratitude of countless worlds." Jack managed a weak smile, though his body felt like it might give out at any moment. "Just doing my job." The crystalline leader approached him, extending a shimmering hand. "You are no ordinary mortal, Jack O'Connell. You have proven yourself a true guardian of the Convergence." The armored leader nodded grudgingly. "Your actions have spared us all. Perhaps there is wisdom in unity after all." As the group prepared to leave the chamber, the holographic map above the monolith flickered one last time. Earth's star shone brightly, its light steady and strong. "You may return home now," the Arbiter said, gesturing toward the exit. "Your journey here is complete." Jack hesitated, looking back at the artifact one final time. Though battered and bruised, he knew he'd gained something far greater than survival. He'd found hope. And that concludes Jack O'Connell's harrowing adventure on Valdyra. If you enjoyed this epic tale of courage, unity, and cosmic stakes, don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling sci-fi stories. There's always another mystery waiting to be uncovered, and another hero ready to rise. Join us next time as we explore new worlds, face new challenges, and uncover the secrets of the universe. See you soon.